Imagine a forest for a second. In that forest, there's like grass and dirt. Grass and dirt both have elements, but let's just look at the grass specifically, because I love grass and you should all touch grass. Now, grass is made specifically more or less out of hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, calcium, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, and sulfur. There's also like sometimes smaller amounts of micronutrients, blah 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 blah, shut the So what I'm trying to say here is that any matter in the universe is made out of these specific elements, and we can describe any matter in the universe using these elements. Just like how like any food or drink, like a cocktail for example, Bloody Mary, because your mom is on her pills, like Bloody Mary are made out of tomato juice, a lot of tomato juice, like very juicy booty, and lime and lemon of course, and some other things that we don't really care about but are also important to making the cocktail. Why are we talking about cocktails in a video about psychology? Because like the lemon and the stuffies in the thingy boy also are made out of the exact same elements. And then there are different kinds of cocktails depending on what elements you put in them. So imagine the brain. There are different kinds of brains, and depending on what kind of elements you put in them, you get a different type of person. How crazy does that idea sound? Typology is all bullshit. Oh my god, typology is all pseudoscience. You're just trying to put people in boxes. And depending on what kind of constellation of people you have, i.e. constellation of brain types you will have a different society. We live in a society, and such societies and such individuals may be more driven to provide the tribalistic element of gathering stuff. I want to get more. I want to get Bugattis and bitches, you know, and some more would like to appreciate the little stuff in life and make the most out of them. You know, they have that organizing quality, that synthesizing quality. Some would like to serve their life for the tribe, for the individuals at the cost of their own selves. And then you have psychopathic, narcissistic fuckers like myself. Some are down to earth and like to eat grass. Some are up in the sky with the clouds. What the fuck are you guys doing? And then some like to focus on what works and doesn't. Some like to focus on what they feel. Ooh. And so what I'm trying to say really is that there are types of people. The reason why specifically types of people is because the brain doesn't have infinite energy, and so the energy has to be allocated in a way to make some kind of game meta, some kind of survival strategy, and that survival strategy has to fit within a tribe because humans were tribalistic, and so each one had to naturally kind of, you know, serve their role within a tribe. And so these roles would obviously imply types, and types just make sense when you look at the information or elements or slash cognitive functions. But now we're getting too complicated, and I'm just saying too much psychology jargon that you have literally no idea what is that, what is any of that. So yeah, everyone is just gonna have their specialty, and due to that fact, everyone is also gonna have their other kind of special, which is special retardation. I hope YouTube doesn't take all my money away from this. I mean, I really wouldn't want to lose my 10 cents income per video. But yeah, and these specialties allow for different game metas, and depending on what your game meta is, you gotta kind of understand what you gotta do in life, what's your blueprint, what are your superpowers, what are your super disabilities, you know? So you can go and win. And just imagine for a second if there was a whole community of people that came together and codified these metas and told you how you could win in life. Imagine if such a community existed. Wouldn't that be nice? Oh, typology exists. Then what the fuck are you doing not being in that community, you... I could very well theoretically keep editing the video at the quality that I was editing it till now, but editing is very exhausting and it's not easy, and if I keep just pushing myself to try and keep doing it at this quality, this video will never be out, and I want it to be out. So let's just do it a very classical style without all that fancy editing. I've got your attention now, so I'm sure we can do this in a much more classy and much more maintainable way, let's say. So all this time I've been just trying to get to this one point, which is there are brain elements. And now we're gonna discover these brain elements. And there's two kinds of elements, brain elements, which is observation. Also, let's just use the word cognitive functions from this point on. There's also the word information elements. But we're gonna use the word cognitive functions because they are cognitive functions. So there are two kinds of cognitive functions, which is the observation / perceptions one, and the decision / judgment one. So let's start with you obviously observe stuff and judge stuff and make decisions and blah blah blah. So the observing ones are sensing and guessing. So sensing is you see. I'm gonna try and not make this sexual. You just, it's the five senses. What is there and what isn't there. Essentially. Or from another perspective, also data, which is kind of about what's there and not there. And then guessing is precisely about what's not there. Actually, it's about you have a Minecraft block. That's we also call guessing intuition. You have a Minecraft block. You only have half of it though. So, how you're gonna figure out what the rest of the half looks like if you cannot sense it? Well, you start guessing how it looks based off the patterns and the data you have organized of how the one half looks. And then if you're a great artist, you could draw a fantastic guess of how the rest of the Minecraft block is gonna look like, or you're gonna draw like myself. And that's kind of how guessing works and sensing works, more or less. Here's also another useful example of it. If we have a path and the path goes right, up, left, up, left, up, left, there's here two possibilities. The one that I chose is continual up, left, because that makes sense. But also another possibility is that this is a pyramid, in which case it will go down, left, down, left, down, left. At some point it's gonna go down, then right. So to complete the pyramid, but this is the thing with guessing. There are possibilities. It's not just there, you're either big or small. No, it's maybe this or maybe that. And then organizing the possibilities in a rational manner may be a good option at that point to synthesize them into potential future. And then the next thing that you're gonna have to do is make decisions or make judgments, cast them. And to do that, you use two main ways. There's two kind of types of doing that, which is functionality or thinking. So what works, it's either works or it doesn't. It's either logically accurate or it isn't. And then there's the values. Should you do that? Do I feel like it? That's kind of the two things you utilize while making judgments. Obviously, all of these are puzzle pieces that fit within each other, because if you're gonna cast judgments, you're gonna need something to cast the judgments on, and all these processes are more or less intertwined. And so with the words that we have already been using, we can already start casting forging a typology system. We can say that certain people are more capable with their sensing, and some people are more capable with their feeling. And if you're both of them, then you're a sensor thinker. Or you're more capable with your intuition and more capable with your feeling, in which case you're a feeler intuitive. There's obviously other possibilities like the intuitive thinker, sensor feeler, and stuff like that. And just like this, you're already casting a typology system, which is pretty amazing by this point. But there is more. Remember the whole thing with how I think I cut that part, but everyone has to be special and serve a specific role within the tribe, and so thereby being perfectly balanced is useless. And so there's always going to be a balance and an imbalance. And one rule you have to understand is that the balance could be only in one of the two. So either the decision making or the observation. So let's say you're balanced in decision making, so which means you're balanced in your thinking and feeling. Then you're gonna necessarily be imbalanced in your intuition and sensing. And this just simply comes from the fact that people have strength, and for these strength, mental energy has to be sacrificed. And so something has to be sacrificed, and they have to be within the same category to be able to be sacrificed. So you can't just have great thinking and then sacrifice the intuition for that. They're categorically different. The energy that goes there doesn't also go there. They're categorically different, and so you can't have them like that. And now it's getting too nerdy, and I don't think I have enough pictures, and I'll probably be too lazy to put up pictures, so I'm just gonna be very movie. So with this, we are starting to invent a more cohesive and concise typological system. So we can assign the imbalance to be either decision or observation. Let's just assume it's decision, which means in this case, since it's more of a thinker than a feeler, your thinking is going to be very much boosted. That's your particular strength. For that, you sacrifice your feelings. And then you're particularly balanced in the observation part, and you're more of an intuitive than a sensor, so it becomes a TNSF, which is, these are just letters which represent the whole word. So if we really wanted to be pedantic, it would be right thinker, intuitive, sensor, feeler. And we could go on and on and on and make different combinations, like the imbalance would be in the observation, more of a sensor, the balance in the decision making, more of a feeler. So very great at sensing, sacrifice intuition for that. Better at feeling than thinking, but overall balanced. Now here's where it gets a bit complicated, because now we're moving just from simple letters to the actual cognitive functions. To now, so we started with like 2, which is observation and decisions, and then we had like, okay, so now we had 4, because thinking, feeling, sensing, and intuition. Now it's about to double again. And the reason why it's gonna double, let's just see all these 4. Yeah, there's 2 versions of each, which is very weird. So I want you to think of now these letters as almost like radars. And there's 2 kinds of radars. One is the introverted, the other one is the extroverted. The extroverted one is particularly more about the quantity. So it's trying to externally trying to gather as much data, which is a bad usage here, but as much of whatever it's gathering as it can. For that, it sacrifices the specific frequency quality. And then the introverted one is rather much more honed in, much more internal, and much more like trying to get specific frequencies. So you could almost say like it's more quality focused. And that's kind of where one way to describe the distinction between the introverted and the extroverted functions. And so if you get any of these and you put the introverted or extroverted behind them, you get a function. Extroverted thinking, introverted thinking, introverted intuition, extroverted sensing, so on. And that's all of them. When you say them, you say the introversion, extroversion first, and then the letter, which is weird, but when you type them, you do it the other way around. So what this says, for example, with the TI, thinking introverted instead of introverted thinking. I know it's weird, but I guess it looks better this way. And here are all the 8, which are TINISIFI, TENESEFE. And now they don't mean anything to you, but now they do. TI is, and these are all the decision functions, if you remember. TI is what works for me. T is what works for everyone. FI is what I value. FE is what they value. When we go to the observation one, they're more. SE is like, what is the data? SI is like, how do I organize the data? And then E is like, what are the patterns? And I is like, how do I organize the patterns? And there are some goofy rules that I'm not really gonna get too much into, but all what you gotta know is that with the when someone you're trying to, remember how we ordered someone into TNSF, for example, earlier? Now you have the extroverted and introverted ones, right? And so you're gonna need a rule for how you're gonna put those extroverted and introvert functions together, right? So there are 2 kinds of rules, which is the classical rule, and the classical rule, as we see here from the ones on the left, are either introverted and then extroverted, repeat, or extroverted, introverted, repeat. But if you're a classical Myersian, you wouldn't know that there's also another variation, which is introverted, introverted, and then the opposite of that, repeat, or extroverted, extroverted, and then the opposite of that, repeat. Too fucking nerdy. I really am trying to make this as simple as possible, but it doesn't goddamn work. And so with the information now that we have gotten, we can take one type and take their orientation. And by the way, if you're asking where did the other 4 go, they're still here. I'm just taking the simpler version. So what we can already say is that this particular type, they're very much focused on what works for them, internal functionality, very much neglectful of what others value, and but particularly more or so have the mapping of higher energy to gathering the patterns than organizing the data. And remember the whole tribe thing that I was talking about earlier? Well, now we're gonna start seeing the qualities that functions share together. And and any two introverted from D, any two introverted from O, any two extroverted from D, and any two extroverted from O are gonna have one quality together, and these are the qualities together. TIFI share the quality of identity, because they're always about the me. You know, what do I like? What do I value? What works for me? TEFE have rather the quality of tribe. You know, so what works for everyone? What does everyone value? And then SENE have the quality of gathering. Okay, so what is the data? This data, this, that, this, that. Oh, and then this, that are connected like this, like this, like this. You know, SENE, and then an ISI is rather, you know, taking that gathering and organizing it to either an understanding of the now and the past, or an understanding of what could be and what will be. And now we can also use this information to have a better understanding of the type, which is now that this person is very narcissistic, very much their identity is pretty much there, very neglectful of other people, and they're more of a gathering person, more of I want more, than rather let's just sit down and make the best of what we have. And these organizations of the functions are called stacks, is what you're gonna know. And there are rules to how exactly these functions are divided and how their energy works and so on, but they're too complex for this video, so I'm gonna skip them. But one thing you need to know is that the proportionality of the functions, or the proportionality of how much the brain decides to give energy to the functions, never changes. Your functions can develop, can progress or regress, but they're only gonna ever do that in a proportional manner. That's a whole discussion within itself, but if you believe in typology in any capacity, you're gonna understand that typology cannot be a thing without type not being changeable, because otherwise it just becomes traits, and traits are a thing, and there are things about people that are dynamic and changing. But Uncle Rogers 10 years ago is still Uncle Rogers now. You know, there's still this stability and concept of who this person is, even if you don't know about typology. Okay? There are personality constants, and there are other complicated stuff such as modulations and submodulations. Maybe one day make a video about them, but not today. I'm gonna skip this because you don't need to know what types don't exist, because the rules are self-explanatory. Now, explaining the letter code names. This is always not fun. So remember how I was like about the whole like how there's like this rule for the introverted, extroverted, and then so on, or the introverted, extroverted. This is what we call the classical rule, which are the classical 16 types, you know. But there's also another 16 types which exist from the rule that the functions can be introverted, introverted, and then extroverted, extroverted, or extroverted, extroverted, and then introverted, introverted. That's one thing you gotta know. And then the other thing that you kind of know but you've forgotten about is that the P kind of represents a quality of chaos and a quality of gathering, and not really an orderly quality, while J represents an orderly and an organizing quality. Now, this was never quite accepted by the community because it was from the letters. No one accepted the letters, and no one could find a justification for it in the functions, but we did. OE, if you remember, is NESE. And so every time you see like a P in someone's type, it's gonna mean that they have like a NESE as one of their two functions. And here's another thing that I need to explain. The letter code name only gives you like the first two functions of someone's type. The rest are explanatory through the rules. This only tells you what these two first are. And so if someone has a P, they're gonna have either NE or SE as either their first or second function. If someone has OI, they're gonna have actually the other ones, which is either an I or SI, which represent the orderly quality. And then the last thing you gotta understand, which I've already explained kind of, is that the C, whenever the C means, it means that either one of these two orders is gonna follow. And if you're asking, okay, which one of them? Well, you gotta look at the type, right? Does it say I? Does it? Where did it go? Does it say I? Then that means the first one will follow. If it says E, the second one will follow. But if it says J here instead of C, sometimes, and if C isn't written, you assume that C is there. But if someone explicitly writes minus J, or someone says this is a jumper, then you use the J rules. So what does the J rule mean, or what does the C rule mean? The C rule means is that if you know nothing about the type, right, except the fact that it's an I and a C, then you know that the order of their functions and specifically the order of the introversion extroversion is gonna be like this. You flip it the other way around if it was an extrovert. That's what kind of the C tells you, is how the introversion extroversion is gonna go. And again, the letters only tell you what the first two is. But if it was a J and if it was an introverted type, then you're gonna know that it's gonna be double introverted. If it was an extroverted type, then you know it's gonna be double extroverted. And I know this sounds all goofy and all complicated and blah blah blah, but we're gonna go through it. So let's say we don't know what INTP minus C means. What is the first thing to look out for? Right, the first letter and the last letter, which is the IC, which tell us, okay, the first function is gonna be introverted, and because it's a C rule, the next one is gonna be extroverted. Fantastic. Now we can go back to the P. The P, what does the P once again tell us? The P tells us that there is either an E or a C in this type. And now what we can say is that since both of these functions are extroverted, and only one of these is extroverted, we know the NE/SE is gonna get in here. And now we can go back to the second letter. Oh, and it's the intuitive one, so we can exclude out the SE. We already know that this one here is NE. And by just simply rule of elimination, we already know that the thinking is going to be here. And here is the TI and E. And if you know the rest of the rules of how the functions go, you'll know all the functions, which are TI and E, SI, FE. If we really want to go all the way, then TE, NI, SE, FI. Okay, so you've gotten how it works with the introverted ones. Now let's go, not an introverted, I mean like the normal types. Now let's go to where it gets convoluted, absolutely convoluted. So we're gonna use all the same rules. And also there's one thing important to know. I'm actually not gonna tell you what it is, because it's gonna make this seem more complicated than it is. Come to my Discord and I'll tell you what it is. So now, okay, so let's start with the INFJ type. So what does the I and the J here tell us? Oh, it tells us that it's gonna be, the first function is gonna be introverted, since it's the J rule. The next one is gonna be also introverted. Fantastic. All right, so what does the J tell us? The J tells us that there's gonna be an OI, right? And what does OI mean again? An I or SI, right? So now here's its problematic, because the INFJ jumper, well, they have both of them introverted. So where is it, first NI or second NI? Well, that seems complicated. Well, we know one thing. We know one thing which I haven't told you, which is it's an N type. So we know it's not going to be SI, so it's going to be NI, right? And the next thing we know, there's going to be an F, right? Right? No. That's the weird convoluted thing with jumper types. To actually use the same system for figuring out jumper types, you're gonna have to learn some extra rules, which are these rules. Which means if an IP, then it's gonna be DIDE, EJ, DEDI, IJ, OIUE, and EPDEOI. So if you know these convoluted extra rules for it to make sense, then you can use the said rules that I just explained. But what can you do? Okay, so you don't want to learn these extra rules, and I don't want to explain them to you because it would make the video more unnecessarily complicated than what it is already. So what do? We flip the J into a C. Okay, so now we can just comfortably use the rules we know. So, but now here's the tricky part. you're gonna have to know at least the three first functions. So we know that the order, this order means that it's always gonna be like kind of a switch. So let's try and find all the 4 functions using this, even though this actually doesn't quite tell us. So we're gonna use rules, only rules we have learned so far, to figure out how to figure out the jumper types. So let's assume it was a classical type to begin with, because that's gonna make it easier. And so the J tells us that there's gonna be an OI function, right? Let's first of all focus on the first 2 ones, and there's only one place for it, so it's gonna be here. And then the next thing we know, it's NI. So yep, because it's intuitive. And then the next thing we know, it's feeling. So here's, we just naturally, very easy. Classical types, very easy. Now remember the whole like dispersion, the whole like rule of like how you have to sacrifice something. So when you have such a great intuition, and introvert intuition specifically, what do you have to sacrifice? Sensing, right? It's gonna be your fourth. It's gonna be the last thing. If we write out the whole thing again, it's gonna be N, F, T, S, right? So we know that the next letter here is gonna be S. So it's N, I, F, E, something, S, E. And then we know naturally that the T is gonna be here. So boom, T, I. Shit, I cannot write for the life of me. T, I. Let's delete this box. It's very broken TI. So here's a much simpler rule to follow. If you already have figured out the classical type and you want to know what's the jumper types, and you can even do this with your head. You take the second function, you take the third function, and just replace them. Yeah, it's that easy. So it becomes an ITI, and then the FESER last. It really is that easy. That's all you have to do. And we could do this with another jumper type, because I know, I swear to God, they're so fucking complicated to figure out if you have no idea how the theory works. So I'm just gonna make up a random type, like ESTJs. Let's say we were trying to figure out the J, so flip it into a C. So we use the rules we have learned so far, EC, and then so that means it's gonna be E first, and then I, E, and then I. And then we focus on the first 2 first, like I said before. It's a J, so there's going to be an OI. Oh, it's the S from the OI, so the next one is going to be SI. And then the only place the T has to go is here. Since so great thinking, bad feeling, so the F goes here. And here is where the intuition belongs naturally. We take these 2. Boom. Put them here. And we have figured out what the lovely ESTJ jumper looks like. TENE. As simple as that. One thing you might want to know is also the 4 stories. The 4 stories tell us that all IPs will have kind of a me story versus the tribe. How they're trying to get me. Oh my god. The EJs are like, you know, they're sacrificing their life to the tribe all the time. And, you know, it's like, me? Who, me? Me? No, me. And then IJs are like trying to control. They're afraid of the chaos and trying to have control over it. It's like, oh, you know, just the world is so chaotic and the world's so imperfect, and yeah. And then the EPs are being like, they're trying to control me. The goddamn Matrix are out there to get me, and I refuse. I want my freedom. So yeah. Once the next video comes out, nobody knows when the part 2 of this is gonna come out, but once it does, you're gonna learn about lovely things like energies, proportion laws, modulation, and tempos. One quicker way you could actually learn about them is if you just go join the Discord server, which you're gonna find the link of in the description. And we host 2 times a week, every 2 times a week, on Friday and Saturday. We host classes where we explain amazing stuff like this, and you could even ask direct questions in there to me directly and learn about the theory directly. That's definitely something you could do. The link will be in the description. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was informative, and bye bye. Peace out.